Welcome to Dakota Preparedness. This video is going to be about 12 ways, 12 signs how you can potentially predict when all hell's going to break loose. Now, predicting exactly what will happen and when things will happen, and particularly when things will go sideways, is hard. But there are definitely warning signs that will indicate that things will be getting bumpy. Here are some of the areas to watch. There's 5 major areas to watch and 12 signs. First area to watch is social unrest. Increased protest and demonstrations. Rising social tensions, deep divisions among political, economic, or racial lines. Loss of faith in institutions, people distrusting governments, media, or law enforcement. And unfortunately, all of these are at play. Now, what are 2 signs that we want to look at to see as a predictor of things will go sideways? One is, do these protests and demonstrations turn violent? So that's number 1. Number 2 is, do the protests and demonstrations disrupt essential services such as transportation and communication and education? And we are starting to see some of that. The second area is economic instability. Rapid inflation, making basic necessities unaffordable, are causing a crush in the value of money. Now, we all know about the Consumer Products Index, and you can follow that. But what I would suggest to you is you have your own personal Consumer Products Index. Some basic, simple things that you follow, like what's the cost of shoes? What's the cost of a haircut? What's the cost of a loaf of bread or cost of a dozen eggs? Job losses and unemployment. Now, in this area and many others, when government publishes their numbers, it kind of reminds me, as a retired certified public accountant, of the question, what is 2 plus 2? And the proper answer is, what would you like it to be? But there can be value in following what is the unemployment trend, what is the youth unemployment trend, and what is the unemployment of first-year college graduates. Supply chain disruptions, shortage of essential goods like food, medicine, or fuel. So you may find that if you get to watching things, drugs like Ozempic, Mounjaro, they're becoming very scarce to find. And certain specialty grocery stores items are becoming difficult to find. But in this area, a couple of measurements that I would strongly suggest following is, number 3, the price of gold, which is very high right now compared to any historical value. 4 is the price of silver, which once again is quite high. 5 is the price of gasoline. And 6, what is the petroleum U.S. strategic reserves? Now, a few years ago, it was 650 million gallons. Today, it's about 325 million gallons. And this is how government can play the price of gas down to suit their purposes. The third area is political turmoil. Does the government have gridlock or collapse, inability to address problems or maintain order, even have a federal budget? Also, increased political violence or terrorism. In my opinion, we haven't seen a significant amount of that in the United States. But that's not the case in the Ukraine and in Israel. Also, what is the widespread corruption and scandals? And we are dealing with unprecedented issues now. There have been politicians who have been certainly dishonest in the past and taken bribes, but nothing on the scale that we see today, including from foreign intervention in our elections and with our politicians, and I may say our institutions. So, number 7, what are we going to measure? Well, what is the measurement of government lies? Now, if there's no lies, well, that's wonderful. But we know from the past that COVID is a perfect example. When they said all things are okay, well, bing, lie. Now, I know this is quite controversial in the community, but when they initially said surgical masks or N95s didn't work, bing, that's a lie. Next is environmental disasters. Natural disasters becoming more frequent or severe. Hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and so on. Shortages of clean water, arable land. We've seen notable examples of this with several major U.S. cities. Pandemics or other widespread outbreaks. Well, I don't have to go any further than we're all familiar with COVID. So I think number 8, the big measurement is shortages of clean water. And finally, we get to a very major item, international tensions, increased military activity or arms race, heightened risk of war. Well, we have a tank battle going on in the Ukraine. On a daily basis, North Korea threatens to burn the whole world down. And there's concerns that China will attack Taiwan. Cyber attacks or other disruptions of critical infrastructure. This could be done through cyber attacks or an orchestrated electromagnetic pulse. So here are the 4 final signs that you should be monitoring. One is if there is a nuclear explosion anywhere in the world for any reason. Now, for perspective, there's been over 2,000 nuclear explosions in the world. Most of those were for testing, but 2 of them were for military purposes in World War II at Nagasaki and Hiroshima. But if a nuclear weapon goes off in the modern world for any reason, it's time to start getting your improvised bunker ready. Number 10, a United States naval ship being sunk. Now, I don't mean a dinghy with an outboard motor and a 50 cal mounted on it. I'm talking about the big boys, a destroyer, a frigate, a guided missile cruiser. If any of those get sunk, even one, all hell is going to break loose, especially if one of the flap tops, the aircraft carriers, get sunk. Then you better be sleeping in your improvised bunker. Now, there are 2 other areas. Number 11 is a soft area. In other words, there are not numbers connected to it. I would highly recommend that you monitor what I consider the foremost geopolitical voice that we have, and that's Peter Zayam. He's very generous with his time. He puts out a lot of videos on YouTube. And the second one is Lex Friedman, who I understand is a computer science and electrical PhD, but he runs a very interesting podcast where he interviews people that are very insightful, people that would be in a position to know things, and keeps up with the cultural trend. And number 12, if everything's going real well, it's smooth sailing. There are winds behind your sails. Stock market's up. You feel healthy. Oh yes, be on your double guard for things turning south. If you found these helpful, please click like and subscribe. It helps the channel and it helps the community. Be prepared.